Some people believe it's a metaphorical description for the different jobs and these things. And we don't really know. We can't say for sure one way or the other. But there's also many accounts in the biblical text of people encountering angels as humans and not even knowing that they're angels until they reveal themselves as angels, right? And so for the people that are out there mocking this, people that believe they've had angelic encounters, going, you don't even know what an angel looks like because they look like these monsters with 1,000 eyes. Well, that's a completely false statement, according to the biblical text and what we read in the Bible. And it's the idea that the angels are messengers and protectors. That was what they were created for. They serve God as messengers and they deliver messages for him. But there's also many accounts of archangels and armies of angels, soldier angels, fighting angels, protector angels. These are all biblical accounts. And so when you have the social media people online mocking it, it's a level of ignorance that I find offensive personally. You
Well,
know what
I
I
can
mean?
say this: angels do not marry,
Mm-hmm.
nor do they reproduce.
And that's biblical.
That's right, Matthew 22:30. As the
Correct.
resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage, and there will be like angels. They will be
Mm-hmm.
like angels in heaven.
Mm-hmm. Be like,
Be
but at
like.
the same time, there's the common, I call it a secular misconception of angelic beings, that the angels are deceased people. You know, when somebody you love dies, they become an angel, and that's not correct either. That's not correct doctrine, biblically speaking.
What's that, Kelly?
Um,
They right when our passed on people aren't angels.
right, exactly. They're a specific class of created being, and again, according to biblical text, there's angels that are still in heaven and they still follow, the God, the creator. And there's the fallen angels that don't anymore. They've rebelled. And to me, there's a lot of, again, urban legend, right? We've been kind of on this theme of urban legends or accepted belief that may not be truth. And one of the ones that I've been really thinking about lately is this idea that angels don't have free will, which is very commonly taught in the church. Angels don't have free will. Free will is a special gift to human beings. Now, and I was taught that, and I was raised with that belief. But when I really look at the scriptures, it seems contradictory to me to say that they don't have free will, but then Lucifer decided that he wanted to be God, and so he got kicked out of heaven. Well, that was his choice. That was his free will. And it says the third of the angels went with him. And to me, that's showing they're exercising their choice of who they're going to follow, and that is a free will choice. And so I think if we're going to believe the biblical text when it comes to angels, we really need to start reading and understanding what the Bibles teach us about what angels are and what they do. And I know that this kind of seems like a weird tie-in to paranormal and cryptids, right? But one of the big popular theories right now with Bigfoot is they are some form of Nephilim. And to clarify what a Nephilim is through the biblical text, it is a hybrid between an angel and a human.
That is correct.
Right? That is the biblical version of what a Nephilim is. And again, that's a conundrum because there are scriptures that talk about angels being androgynous, but somehow they were able to procreate with human females. And to me, in my opinion, the idea of Bigfoot being a Nephilim is an oversimplification of what the Bible talks about. Because they describe Nephilim in the biblical text, in the Hebrewic text, and they talk about them being like superhuman. It doesn't talk about them being monstrosities. It doesn't talk about them being described like Bigfoot. They're men of renown. They're the heroes of old. They're like the battle stars and all this kind of stuff, right? They're great, massive, gigantic human men that are known for their prowess and their intelligence and their strength. They're never once described as a beast or a creature of the field. That's not Nephilim. And what a lot of people don't realize is that there was tribes of Nephilim, and Nephilim themselves interbred with humans. And so there was the Nephilim line kind of watering down and receding down, and they were called other names. They were distinguished, Raphaim and all these other terms. They were distinguished from the Nephilim. And when they talk about Goliath, everybody talks about Goliath, but they don't read the rest of Goliath, where he has like multiple brothers, and they're all giants, and they all come from this family of giants. And when you look at it, they are descendants of Nephilim, the Raphaim, and it's all descended down. But again, they're described as humans, just super gigantic monsters. That not monsters is the right term. They're just giant people. They're not Bigfoot creatures. They're not Dogman creatures. They're not like that. So to use the word Nephilim, in my opinion, is incorrect when referring to Bigfoot or Dogman or whatever creatures we're talking about, you know. But in those same texts that tell us about the fallen angels and what they did, and here we're talking like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, extra biblical, I can't even say that word tonight, extra biblical texts that are not necessarily spiritual canon, but were part of the historical text of the Aramaic, the Jews, you know, the original people that it was all written about. These texts were part of their education and part of their learning, and so they would have an understanding of what these were. And it talks about how not only did the fallen angels or the watchers or whatever they wanted to call them mated with the human females and produced Nephilim, it said they also corrupted the flesh of other animals and plants. And so if we're going to use the biblical text as trying to find a source of Bigfoot, I think that's the area that we would look at, is the corrupted flesh of other animals, which is why they all have, you know, Bigfoot is primate, dogman, canine, right? Mer people, fish, all these different beings that are out there. And what's really interesting for me, and I'll get back to my other angelic stories. I know but this is one of the rabbit holes, you know, that we need to look at when we're talking about angelic beings, is how many cultures out there have creatures that are a mixture of human and animal. Pretty much every major culture or religion out there has this somewhere in their lore, even if it's not religiously related, right? So I always go back to Greek mythology, and we start talking about like the Minotaur, the Minotaur on Crete, birthed from a female and a bull. And how do we not know that doesn't tie in into this corrupted flesh, right? It could all be telling us the same story, but from different narrations, different people, right? Like Grizzly, when you were a police officer and you had a crime, let's say there was a car crash, and you heard it from the grocer who saw it out the window, you heard it from the guy in the truck behind him, you heard it from the old lady walking her dog, all different perspectives, and they gave you a different story of what happened.
That is correct.
But it was all the same event. And I personally believe that a lot of these other stories, these other mythos, these other folklores, they're all telling the same story. I really believe that. I think when they talk about in Greek mythology, the demigods, and they're talking about, Zeus came down and made all kinds of babies, and Poseidon and all these things, and they all had special powers. They were the men of renown. They were the ones they told stories about. It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. It's the same story, just from different perspectives and different backgrounds and different filters, like we like to talk about, different perceptions. And so I think the idea of talking about, the angelic beings, I think is an important aspect of what we do when we're studying and we're doing research. And we need to know what it means to say something like Bigfoot's a Nephilim. Well, what does that really mean? Like, how do we dig into that? So that's kind of how it ties in. And these are all the thoughts that were going through my head as I'm traveling down the highway at 90 miles an hour. Not the best way to do it.
No, absolutely not. You just
Right, so-
incriminated
Be in
yourself.
the vehicle.
Listen, in Florida, like, that's how fast you go. That's just how it is. What are your thoughts on that, Kelly Jo? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I believe like you do, but I was always told that by my guides that angels do have to do the will of God. I'm not arguing with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they said. They have to do the will of God. Man has free will. So, and
Right.
like you say, there's any kind of angel that you need.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's blessing angels or parking angels. If you need help, you can pray for any kind of angel you need. Like one time I told my girlfriend she had to pray for a landing angel. She's learning how to fly, and she wasn't doing too good. And I said, "You're going to crash." I said, so she prayed for a landing angel. After she did that, she landed pretty as you please and never landed wonky again. And there is different kinds of beings.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can pray for protection and war angels. They can come in a millisecond.
Mm-hmm.
And they really do have swords and bucklers. They just
Absolutely.
they're like right there and they surround you. There's a warrior prayer for getting rid of the demons from people. A warrior prayer for protection of storms. Anything you need. And sometimes they won't come as a form. They'll come as a ball,
Mm-hmm.
of light, an orb, or lightning will come up. Like one time I had a message, and there was like 3 thunderclaps, and then the room turned indigo, purple, blue. And the Virgin Mary came and gave me a message, and I smelled roses. And then when she left, there was 3 clashes of thunder, and the vibration and the vortex opened. She went. So, and that was an angel. She's an angel.
Yeah. So there's a lot there to unpack, and it's not just it's not just a religious thing. There's a lot of secular aspects to it, and that's where at the beginning I said angelic beings or light beings or however you refer to them. They're out there. I believe, my belief on the spiritual realm is, you just like in the human world, you have your good and your bad, and you have everything in between. And I believe the angels are on the good side. They are directly in contact with God. They're his personal workers, and that's what they're built into,
Correct.
And what's fascinating to me is, with my background, is you also hear stories from native cultures themselves.
Yes.
That aren't of a religious nature, or I should say aren't of a Christian nature.
Right.
And I heard this one guy talk one time. It was on a radio show. I didn't hear him in person. Want to be clear on that. Where he was a witch doctor for a tribe in South America. And I don't exactly recall which tribe, but I believe it was in Brazil, northern Brazil somewhere. I may be wrong. But it was definitely Amazonian in South America, which is why I was so intrigued to listen to it, because, that's where my background comes from. And he was on this radio show, and he had learned Spanish. He wasn't speaking English, but he was speaking Spanish, and they had a translator for the audience. And he tells of how when he was a witch doctor before they became, saved, how he knew about the different sides. He knew there was the dark and the light side. And he said he was in the dark side because the dark was safe and it was peaceful and you could hide in the dark and it was okay. And all the beings, all his spirit beings, guides, um, the entities were of the dark and they gave them his power. And I firmly believe that witch doctors and tribal shaman have powers.
They do.
Exactly. I know a lot of people say no, they don't. That's just all hogwash, but it's not. It's a legitimate thing.
And it's
And
legal.
yeah, he even said he had asked the dark ones about the light, and when it hurt him, he said he couldn't look at the light beings because they hurt his eyes and they pained him. And they said you need to stay away from those light beings, that you need to stay with us where it's safe and we won't hurt you and we can hide you and all this kind of stuff. And so even in I don't want to be offensive or call what it's not, but uneducated or tribal people that have never been exposed to secular culture, have never been exposed to Christianity, they only know their own beliefs and structures. They have an understanding of light beings or angels versus the other side, and they're exposed to it too.
Light
And for
duality.
right, and it blows my mind where these so-called uneducated primitive stone age or however we term them indigenous people have a better understanding of spirituality than most of the civilized world does.
Because they aren't as judgy.
Well, I don't know about the judgy part because I've met some pretty judgy Indians before,
Yeah,
but
I
they
have.
they just know they just know what the reality is. They
Right.
know it's real. They know it's out there.
Right.
You
They
know,
walk closer to it.
right? They have to exactly. They don't have all the extra noise, clogging up their senses and everything. I'm trying to read, but I cannot read the screen for nothing tonight.
For
Um,
it is written, he will command his angels concerning you
yeah,
to guard you.
absolutely, absolutely, and the this all ties into the main story I wanted to tell you guys, which is my own personal account. Um, and it took a while for me to come to this conclusion on the story because at first I thought this person was an agent of bad, an agent of evil. I don't want to say a demon because I think there's specific classifications. Um, but I just thought this person was agent of evil. Several years ago, back when I was a young man, I was involved in a lot of stuff that wasn't very savory, and I had a lot of unsavory friends. Um, Me and some of my friends were traveling from Tampa back down in this direction towards Port Charlotte area. And again, going down the highway about 90 miles an hour, we picked up a hitchhiker. I, in my younger days, was known for picking up hitchhikers. It's something I enjoyed doing. I could get a story out of them most of the time and find out about them, and I could help somebody and just do some good for somebody, even if it was just 20 miles down the road. We picked up this hitchhiker. It was a young lady, maybe 20s, maybe younger than that. Not really sure. And she was telling us her story, and it didn't make sense to me when she was telling it to me, but at that time I kind of expected most people to be dishonest. And her story was that she had been traveling with a group of traveling exotic dancers, and they had abandoned her, and so now she was trying to make her way south. Well, as we're conversing with her and the other people in the car, we're going down the highway, again about 90 miles an hour, and I was driving a Ford Escort station wagon. And the hitchhiker girl, she was sitting in the passenger rear seat directly over the tire. And as we're traveling down the highway 75 there, that tire blows at 90 miles an hour on the interstate. And I was able to get it off the road into the median. We didn't have any. There was no rollover. We did not hit any other vehicle on the highway, which was absolutely amazing. And then when the vehicle finally came to a stop, we were no more than 20 yards away from where the highway turned to an overpass, and there was a huge drop onto the underpass, where we would have gone over basically a cliff, which would have been a huge drop. And we managed to, not a single one of us had an injury.
Wow.
There wasn't a scrape, there wasn't a bruise, and that's blowing a tire at least 90 miles an hour on the interstate. We all get out. We look around. Is everybody okay? Everybody was fine. I think it was a tow truck driver had seen the accident coming the other way, and he quick pulled off to make sure we were all okay. I leaned down to look at the tire, and everybody's talking, and I'm hearing them. I'm still kind of stunned, and I hear this hitchhiker, this lady, go, "Hey guys, I'm really sorry about your luck, but I have to be moving on."
She was an
Okay.
angel.
Right? And so then we're all like, okay. And then I turned to look at her, and she's gone. And I asked everybody else, I said, "Hey, where did they go?" And they're like, "Oh, well, she must have already been picked up by another vehicle." And I was looking around like, that was like 10 seconds. There was no way, like, she was talking and then all of a sudden picked up by another vehicle and gone already. And my first thought, because of my mindset at the time, I was in a darker place, and it was, she caused this. She was sitting over it. Her bad energy, her juju, whatever, caused the tire to break. This is all her fault. But as I learned more, and I studied more and learned more about myself, and became more spiritually awake, I came to realize that wasn't the case at all. That it was, she probably saved our lives. And whether she knew she was an angel at the time, or if an angel was working through her, I can't say. I don't know. But I am convinced that she was an instrument of protection for us, because blowing a tire at 90 miles an hour on a busy interstate and walking away with not even a bruise on anybody in the car, that's a miracle.
Yeah, totally.
That's a miracle.
God can use anybody.
That's it. But for me, that would have been an angelic thing and not just a person being used, because that was supernatural protection.
That was an angel.
Yeah. And so that's the only moment in my entire life I can definitively say I believe that an angel came and intervened. Now, I've had other things happen that were strange or kind of out of the ordinary, or just kind of like, okay, that was weird. In particular, after my first son was born, Gabriel, my ex-wife and I took up mall walking for exercise. And we were walking through this mall, and it was really, really busy. And all of a sudden, an elderly gentleman appears next to us, and he's got this biggest grin on his face. And he was like, "Wow, you guys are amazing, and your baby is precious." And he reached out and put his hand on my baby's head and said a prayer, a blessing over him, and then just disappeared into the crowd. It happened in like 10 seconds. It was amazing. And we just kind of stopped and looked at each other, and we looked after where this guy was, and he was nowhere to be seen. And then that itself could potentially be an angelic contact. We don't know. The Bible very specifically and clearly states that we can entertain angels unawares. We won't even know what's happening. And that's a reality of our existence. There's too many cultures out there that believe in the powers of good and the powers of evil, and the beings on the right side and the beings on the evil side and all this. There has to be something to it. There has to be.
There is, and it comes full circle. Like you can read any religion, and it comes full circle.
Hmm.
You know.
There's a lot to it. That's a lot to it. So that's where I wanted to bring up the idea. And again, being on social media and seeing all these things, and now people that believe in, and it's weird. You can believe in UFOs and aliens now, and everybody goes, well, yeah, of course. But you say you believe in angelic beings, and you're mocked and you're made fun of. And it's absolutely outrageous to me how we can go, yes, this part is real, but no, this part is fake. Like, oh, you believe in Bigfoot, that's cool, whatever. You believe in angels, you're a religious nut. There's something wrong with you. And it's disheartening. It really is.
Well, I
What
don't
do
think
we
angels
go?
have anything to do with religion. I mean, an angel being is they're here to help the earth, here to help us
Hmm.
individuals. Like one time I was driving with my husband, and when I was married, and I'm not married anymore, but we're driving along, and all of a sudden we had a blow up. My husband's all upset. He's like, "Bleh, bleh." Well, they forgot to put the tire back in the car, so we didn't have tire. So I just said, like a prayer to the universe, I said, okay, we need a little help. Up comes this little man with a white pickup truck, white hair, white suit, white shoes, blue eyes. And it was one of those little tiny trucks with the cab over. And he goes in the back of his truck, and he goes and he gets a tire plug, and he gets an air tank, and he jacks up the tire, and he's not getting dirty. Nothing. He
Hmm.
doesn't smudge on him. He goes, "Oh,
Wow.
I came from church," and his eyes are twinkling, blue eyes. And he puts everything back, and he goes up to my husband and goes, "See, God can change a tire." And then he gets in his truck, and the truck drives away, and it like evaporates.
Hmm.
That was an angel.
That's wild.
Yeah, and then if we're gonna have open and honest dialogue, which is what our show is always about, respecting everybody's opinions, having these dialogues, and going down these rabbit holes to see what's going on there. It's essential that we acknowledge that this is real. This is a phenomenon. We may not understand it fully, and again, everybody has a different lens on how they perceive this. But the spirit realm, I think pretty much all of our listeners will agree exists, right? Most of them believe in the paranormal. They believe in ghosts. They believe in demonic activity, and they believe in UFOs. They believe in orbs and all these things. And the angelic side, the light side, the it's all part of it. And we just need to make sure that we're being honest with ourselves when we say, hey, I believe in ghosts and paranormal and spirits, but then go, oh, well, that angel stuff, that just doesn't make any sense to me. That's just religion. Because it's not. It's not what it's about.
It all goes together.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And
There
I'm
isn't
seeing it.
a separation.
Right. I mean, to me, it's not a separation, it's a classification more
Right.
than anything,
But
you know?
it I believe it's all together.
Uh huh.
I mean, you don't have to believe the way I do, but I don't find it strange when somebody tells me something like you meeting the lady and her disappearing.
Hmm.
That's not strange to me. It's like, and I knew she was an angel. It's like I got all excited. I escaped.
Sure. And then and that's what it's about, and it all ties in. Again, if we're going to be talking about something, we need to understand what we're talking about. And so when we're talking about the idea of Bigfoot as Nephilim, or we're talking about how you know there's ghosts but there's not angels, we really need to, as researchers people in the audience really have an understanding of what you're talking about. And if you're not sure, you don't know, it's cool to say, hey, I don't know. I'm not
Right.
sure. And then go with that and try and find and seek out that knowledge, you
Right.
know? Um, is that Anne's question that we were waiting for there, Grizz?
Yeah.
There we
It's
go.
Hi, Kelly. I sent a nice card to my love interest man. How he feels about me after reading the card, and will it help move things romantically for us? It's been very slow.
I think it tickled him. I seen him open the card and read it and smile.
There you go, Ann.
Mhm.
But I have talked to a lot of people with stories and encounters like
Mhm.
you, Justin, and Kelly Joe. And I do believe those were angels that they experienced.
Yeah,
So
it's just, it makes sense. And again, we need to keep our honesty and our integrity when we're talking about things in the spiritual world and the paranormal world and how it is all kind of tied together, and have that realization that you can't necessarily have one without the other. It all comes together,
I
you
mean,
know.
look at the petroglyphs. They have in the petroglyphs they have angelic beings that
Mhm.
have lights coming off them in the
Mhm.
petroglyphs out
Yeah.
west.
And everybody wants to get tied up, and like you said, it's not a religious thing. It's a
No,
reality thing, you know.
right,
And in our belief structure, yes, they are directly tied to God. And that's my faith, and I believe that angelic beings are a specific thing.
right,
Absolutely. But other people can experience them that don't even believe in God the way I believe in God,
right. All
you know.
across the world, culture, creeds,
Right.
religion.
And to me, that just again creates the validity that this is a real thing. This is a real experience. Now, from my perspective, I believe it should point more people to the direction of my faith and my God and what he did with them and how they are attributed in that aspect. But I understand that's not going to be for everybody. But the idea is that this is a real thing. This really happens to people, and we need to be aware of that there are other things happening in the spiritual world, the paranormal world, beyond just the bad stuff that we hear. Because what do we hear about all the time? I have never seen a ghost hunting show where they go, oh, I think there's an angel in this house, right? It's always the negative. It's like, oh, there's a ghost, there's a demon here, there's this demonic activity. We never hear the good things that are happening out there. So I really wanted to bring that up and bring that out and bring it to light that there is a positive side to paranormal stuff, to spirituality stuff, without it necessarily being a religious conversation. And I think that that's important that we have that all the way around idea.
Brian Barber. Can an angel possibly use a person's influence them, if you will, to accomplish their work?
I don't see why not. It doesn't even necessarily have to be an angel influencing them, but it would be, definitely could be a spiritual influence. Like we said before, that girl may herself not have been an angel. I believe she was because of the protection that we were provided. But I've helped people. I've gotten a flash before where, there's somebody on the side of the road outside of Walmart looking for help. I don't normally offer money. For one, I don't have a lot of money. And I have a trust issue with people because, I was a homeless drug addict years back. And I wasn't buying food if somebody gave me money. That's not what my purpose was. But there are times where I have just had a flash of being told, you need to do this.
Well, that's your
I,
intuition and your guardian angel.
right. And that's what I'm saying. It's an influence because it's not something I would normally do. And in one case in particular, I was shown specifically what to buy for this guy standing outside. I mean, down to what drink to buy him. Like it was, you're going to go in and you're going to buy this sandwich and you're going to buy this bag of chips and you're going to buy this drink and you're going to give it to him. Like it was very clear, brands and everything. It was nothing I would have bought for myself, but it was, hey, you're doing this. And that would, to me, I wouldn't say it was an angelic influence to help him, but it was definitely a divine influence because that's not something that I would have done myself. That came from somebody else. That came from somewhere else.
Yes.
So
What else we
God
got there?
works in mysterious ways, and angels do the bidding, and he
Mm-hmm.
commands them to provide protection and seances, or not seances. They see over us and intertwine with us when we need help,
Mm-hmm.
whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, and they're part of the spiritual world. They're always around us. You know, I don't know if I prescribe to the idea that every person has a specific angel or guardian angel. I don't know about that.
They
I
do.
do believe that, some people might need more angelic help than others, or if we pray for them, we'll get the assistance, or with God's all knowing power, he'll know, hey, this guy's really going to need some help today. I can't say that I know how it works as far as that aspect goes. But I know the help is there for us, and I know that we are always surrounded by the spiritual realm. And bring it back to the Bible. I believe it was Elijah with one of his servants, and they were out at a battlefield, and they were greatly outnumbered. But Elijah's just like, nah, we got this. It's cool. And his servants going, how can you be so confident? How do you know we're going to beat these? He's like, well, don't you see all the angels around us? And the servants was like, no. And so Elijah prayed for the veil to be lifted from the servant's eyes. And he looked and he saw armies and armies of angels all around getting ready to do battle for him. And that's, Grizz and I, we've talked about this idea of another realm all around us that we can't perceive because we don't currently have the ability to. And there it's there. It's all part of that realm that we don't belong to, but we're also a part of. And I think part of the fall of humanity, to again use a Christian terminology for it, is that we are no longer able to perceive that other realm. And all these religions that talk about higher vibration and moving up and meditating to get to the higher levels, I believe we as humans have this space where we know we're missing out, and we know that we need to elevate our vibration, our frequency, however each person has that into them, to be able to perceive this other realm. And I believe that's kind of like the innate goal in all humans that are in touch with themselves and the understanding of nature and how it works.
Yeah. And then sometimes we'll have, like, I call it God winks, coincidences. That's spiritual. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, there's a coincidence.
Yeah.
And it's not random. It's sent to you as a message. It's like, hello, pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. And I firmly believe that. And I know people that have come to the Christian belief system because of incidents like that, where they go, there's no way it could have been anything other than divine intervention. Excuse me.
Thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. Thank you.
Well, yeah, and then I got to give credit to Grizzly for that, because I pretty much said, hey, Grizzly, I want to talk about angels, but I want somebody else on the show with me. Pick somebody from our group. Pick somebody from the Grizzly family, and we can have a conversation. Because like I said, I'm not studied in this. I've never done any real like deep dive or studies into the angelic realm. I know there's books and books and books written about it. I've read some personal encounter stories about angelic encounters, but I don't consider myself studied on the real lore of it. I just have my personal experiences and then books and things I've read of other personal experiences. And I know there's people out there that have books that supposedly have like all these names and ranks and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know about that. I don't.
Me either. I'm not a specialist in that, and I don't profess to be.
Right. But that's what makes the conversation so honest and so genuine is we're not coming at it from a scholarly perspective. We're just using our own logic, our own intelligence, our own intuition, our own experiences to kind of understand this.
Yes.
And I think it was an important conversation to have.
Yeah, it's been very nice, and I appreciate you, Kelly, like always.
Yes, thanks for coming on.
So long to get on. My internet went out, and I didn't know how to make it work. I am not technological, so I said a prayer. It's like, God, help me fix this. Make it work, please.
But ladies and gentlemen, like I said, wait till next week for part 2. And we really appreciate Kelly taking time out of her busy schedule, and everybody.
Thank you, Kelly.
In.
Thank you.
And from coast to coast around the world, we'll catch you on the next show. Everybody, good night and Godspeed.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night, everybody.